Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Al-hakim, your host today on the Surgical Spirit podcast. And today we welcome Ali Jaffery. How are you, sir?
Alhamdulillah, I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Well, Jaffery is a very traditional Shia surname.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. There's a funny story behind that. We're actually um Kazemi, or I guess as you guys will call Musavi. And
I
my
mean, I mean, I mean, our listeners are sort of not really Shias. Could you sort of kind of
oh
elaborate
right,
more?
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um so yeah, so Shias tend to have take their names from the Imams, so the
Mm.
12 Imams, the seventh of those being Imam Musa al-Kazim. So anybody from their descendant is called Kazimi. Similarly, anyone from the sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq's descendant is called Jafari. Now, in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, that South Asian area, Jafari is considered almost safer than Kazimi because you have a lot of people who are not Muslim call themselves Jafari. So my father's uncle decided to change the name to Jafari to assimilate a bit more, even though we're from his son's lineage. But yeah, I guess you could still call us Jafari. Yeah.
So it's to stay safe, so to speak.
Yeah, it was to stay safe, so avoid persecution or. But I was still like, I never bought that story. I was like, but Jafari is still very, very she in its,
Yeah.
its understanding. But you do get a lot of people in India called Jafari, and they're not Muslim.
So is this persecution from Muslims or non-Muslims at the time?
Um, uh, at the time, it's probably persecution from Muslims more than non-Muslims.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So it's
yeah.
sort of Sunni Muslim persecuting the minority Shia Muslim.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So there was like my family kind of had that experience of that. So now, but alhamdulillah, we're in UK now, so we're less in that
Well, still a
crazy.
minority, really, but I guess the UK, they're used to having minorities around.
Yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that's a little bit of fun fact behind my name.
Oh, that's interesting. So you are
Yeah,
actually a Sayyid,
that's right. Yes.
and for the listeners out there who are not Shias, what does a Sayyid mean?
So Sayyid is basically a descendant of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's basically it. So
Mm.
my mum's line is Razawi, and my dad's line is Kazmi. So that's the ninth Imam from my mum's side, and then the seventh Imam from my father's side, and obviously all the Imams are descendants of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah.
And did you feel a pressure on you, being descendant of the Prophet?
I think we definitely, when we grew up, it was like, our mom would say, um, if um, if you do something wrong, it's like two slaps rather
Yeah.
than one slap because you should know better kind of thing. So yeah, definitely we had very kind of religious upbringing, and it was kind of the fact that you need to serve the community, you need to kind of um, be very careful. Um, was definitely, it was something. It was like a responsibility almost. We grew up in that. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. For me, my mother is not from the Sayyid side, but my dad is. So, I've got, I guess, less pressure than you. Um,
Still saying.
yeah, yeah, and it is. The upside is that you do get that sort of extra piece of chocolate, an extra piece of biscuit when you're in the community. And so if you're old enough, they'll give you a seat, or a front seat,
Yeah.
in the auditorium.
Mm.
But otherwise, it was this sort of difficulty inside, that you've got
Mm.
so much responsibility at a young age as well, because we have to
Yeah.
start performing from such a young age.
Yeah.
And we kind of grow up a bit too quickly. I mean, that's what I felt, is I
Mm.
didn't really have a like a silly childhood where I can just be silly and just grow up as a child. Really, I had to grow up
Mm.
very quickly.
Yeah. 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 Certainly, I can connect with, you know, expectations on, um, that parents bring up, and yeah, it can be difficult for not a child to be a child in that, early childhood stage. Definitely, yeah.
Where did you spend your childhood?
I grew up in Pakistan, so I was born in Rawalpindi. So I was until it was 12 when I moved to England. So before that time, it was all in Pakistan, Rawalpindi. I'm the youngest of five. So yeah, with my sisters and kind of cousins, and so in Pakistan, that's my childhood memories.
And what do you remember of your childhood over in
Um,
Pakistan?
um, it's funny because I married my wife, and my wife's been, she's spent her life in Pakistan completely. So and I moved when I was 12. So whenever she mentions things to me like, oh, that thing and this thing, and I've this really fond memory of, oh yeah, we used to, really fond memories going back of, this is what we used to eat, or this is what, and we had that culture. And I have, we were quite blessed, Alhamdulillah. Father had good job. He had a stable job. He was working. He had an evening clinic. He was a doctor. He's a doctor. He's retired now. And we had a good education. He spent all of his money so we could get private, education there. So we were quite sheltered in the sense that we didn't, our school was so far away. We had to go on a van that would pick up at 7 a.m. in the morning and then pick everyone up, which would take 1.5 hours. Then we would go to school and we would be the last people to be dropped off. So it was a long day, school day. But my mother especially, she was a high achiever in her studies, and she made sure every one of us did really well in education, pushed us. So uh, so we had, yeah, what we mentioned earlier, we had the fact that, okay, you need to achieve, you need to do really well. Um, and there was that pressure, but I guess that pressure is in a good sense, which kind of is helping us now, and kind of where all of my brothers and sisters are in, mashallah, good positions now. There isn't any one of us who's struggling. But yeah, you get a lot put on, a lot of pressure, um, at that age. I can certainly say, yeah.
Well, what did you enjoy most about school over there?
I used to, funnily enough, I used to love English, and we had like debating competitions and essay competitions and all that. And I'd be just like, I want to go to England. And at that time, I didn't have any idea that we would be moving. And I really enjoyed literature. I read Harry Potter books. I remember I was like a I was obsessed. I had my friend. We would be with our magic wand. We'd be doing spells, um, and yeah, I was I liked there was one point where I was like, okay, I need to focus on my studies, and I developed an interest. So I liked reading. IT was just coming in at that time, and I remember really liking my computer classes, which I was doing. I was a bright child in that sense, but also there was a hint of I wanted that acceptance. So I wanted to be known that okay, I'm achieving. So give me some love, give me some positive regard because of that. Because I almost made my identity as okay, this is who I am. I'm an academic person, and that gave me meaning and value, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, so there's good parts of my childhood. The stuff which is difficult in my childhood was the gender, understanding my gender and understanding who am I as a boy, what do other boys like. And I had, while I was doing quite well academically, that was my defense mechanism in a sense for the pain or the incongruence which I was kind of feeling when I was younger, in thinking, well, I'm not really like one of the boys. I don't really like wrestling, or I don't really like sports. I don't really like these things which I'm supposed to be liking.
When
And
did that
yeah,
start?
I would say, I mean, the earliest memory I have is me being 3, and there's like, like those dinky cars that you're playing with, and you're kind of going with that. And I always had that. But because I had grown up in an environment where it was predominantly my mother and my sisters in the household, there was no male involvement, there wasn't anyone else. So I remember the first day of school, seeing the boys like pushing each other and being rough and stuff like that, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? I've not experienced something like this. They're so, they're rough in what they're doing. And I was like, I just felt like, okay, how do I make friendship with these people? What's common? What are things which are common, which I talk about? And I really struggled. I remember my first nursery report, which I still have, says Ollie is a very shy child, and he's taking time to come, to open up. And at that age, I couldn't even communicate what was happening to my parents because I didn't know what was happening. I felt that I was different to the other boys, from nursery, from a very, very young age. And it wasn't something I could just easily communicate to someone. Yeah, at that age.
And obviously, I mean, I'm saying obviously, I mean, I don't know, but the opportunity for you to communicate wasn't there. Or were you too young to communicate this change?
Um, I guess there's probably a lot of factors in there. Yes, I was probably too young. I didn't know how to express my emotions. I remember being times where I would, the school experience was too difficult. Either there'd be some bullying or something had happened, and I would go in a room and I would just cry, and then I'd be fine, and then I would come back, but I wouldn't let anyone see I'm crying because I didn't want my parents at that time to worry for me. My sisters probably recall me as being a very angry child because I was like, kind of had this feeling of always being misunderstood. And yeah, so I think I was failing to communicate what I was actually experiencing, and this is before, this is like 5-year-old me, 6-year-old me, just like thinking, "Oh, okay, I'm a bit of a loner. I don't really fit in." Yeah.
So what did you fit in? Was there anything that you really fitted into at the time?
Um, so and it's funny that my memories of childhood are very, very hazed, as I don't
Patchy.
remember. And
Yeah.
I read this somewhere, and which said, and I don't know if it's true, it says people who go through some trauma, the mind erases some of the memories because they're just not memories the mind wants to keep, you know.
Yeah, they are painful. I mean, everything that's unconscious gets pushed away if it's
Yeah,
uncomfortable. If it's comfortable, then the mind or the ego will accept it with open arms.
yeah. I mean, alhamdulillah, I didn't have extreme abuse or something like that, which really stands out. But when I look back, and I can't remember, and it's funny because I went when I was getting married, I went back to Pakistan. I met with my childhood friend, and he said to me, "Ali, do you remember this happened?" And I was like, "Oh yes, this happened," and I'd completely erased it. And he said, "This happened," and he said to me he remembers those things every day. And my brain had completely forgotten all these events, which because I guess there was shame in that. I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that happened." Or some were really good memories, but if you go back and you just ask me what did connect with, I probably connected at one point with education and studies, because that was the only way I could get acceptance and love from other people, and that's what I was seeking. I was saying somehow someone loved me, somehow someone kind of recognized me, um, and, and yeah, so I would say it was quite a confused kind of um, upbringing. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And most childhoods go through kind of this ups and downs, and because we're children, we're kind of thirsty for whatever comes along.
Mm, mm.
So it's very natural. Now, your dad was is a doctor, or at the time he was a doctor.
Mhm.
What was he, a family doctor or a surgeon, or?
So he's specialized in internal medicine.
Mm.
So he did his MRCP in the UK. My first two siblings were born in the UK, and then he went back to Pakistan because he wanted us not to kind of lose our roots, lose our heritage, kind of things. So my sister and I, we were born in Pakistan. So he was a professor at the medical college in Rawalpindi, and he had an evening clinic.
A
And
very prestigious position in society, very prestigious.
yes, yeah, you can say. I mean, he came from a family which had absolutely nothing. So he got in uh, King Edward Medical College, which is a very prestigious college. He was very lucky. He came from poverty, a family of poverty, and he worked really, really hard to. And I remember when he got he describes to me when he comes to England, he didn't have absolutely anything. He didn't have any money, and he built from absolute zero. Um, so yeah, so I think he had, he developed his career in. I mean, he only retired a few years ago, so he had like 30, 40 year of medical career, um, which then allowed myself to, to have the education and stuff which he probably wanted for himself, kind of thing, which so yeah, but the effect of that, which I realize now as an adult, was because he had an evening clinic and he was a professor, he didn't have much time for the family and kind of upbringing. But um, it wasn't because he didn't want to, it was because of he was the sole earner. My mum obviously was, she didn't work. And it's very common, in Pakistani family to have the father to be the sole
Yeah.
breadwinner. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's a professor in the university as well, and with fathers like that, who come from poverty. I mean, my dad is
Mm,
similar to that. His father, my granddad, was a well-known religious imam and orator who didn't believe in science.
mm,
My dad went against him and became a professor of zoology, marine biology. Um, but with fathers like that, they expect you to succeed.
yes.
They
Yeah.
expect you to get 100% because they did it and they came from
Mm,
nothing. Now they are giving us everything, and yet we don't excel.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
totally unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my eldest brother, he got more of that. He got from dad saying, because he's a doctor as well. So he got that push that go to US, do the USMLE, do the exams, and you'll have a good career. And he got that push. I guess I was the youngest, so I didn't get that much of a push from my father to
Was that
I
because
could,
you were hiding behind your mother
yeah.
and the sisters and not in the firing line?
Yeah. My mother had an influence on all of us. She would
Yeah,
be like, you got 24 out of 25. Why didn't you get 25 out of 25? We had that. You were second in class. How dare you?
yeah,
Why weren't you the first?
yeah,
So we had a very, very high from my mom's side. My mom would be very involved. She would know all of my friends' names. She would go
yeah,
to all of our parent-teacher meetings. She was very, very involved in our upbringing. Whereas my father, he he because of his work situation, he couldn't spend that time with us. And because I was probably the youngest, it wasn't, um, it was like, okay, there's another child kind of thing, which is which is understandable now. But for me, it wasn't. You don't really think like that when you're young. You can't. You don't know why things are,
So
the
you
way they
really
are.
identified with the feminine, really
I
identified with it.
identified with the feminine because it was all I knew. It was my dad would probably come in from evening clinic at about 10:30 p.m. kind of thing. You'd briefly see him, and then it would be, uh, and even in terms of who taught me to play, I remember my mom teaching me badminton, when I was, and my mom was the type in her youth who would climb trees. So she was quite tomboyish. She was like, like, let's go and do things. And, she's very active. And because she was so involved and um, you would ask anything to mom and she would know it. I naturally saw my mum, I was closer to my mum because she had that interest in me and she could solve everything that, all the issues. And I was the youngest and I had two sisters, and I felt I'd almost always be compared. So it'd be like, well, this sister has got this award, she's got this, and my mum would obviously give positive regard. She'd give love to, when my sister would win a debating competition, when they would come top, and I looked at that and I was like, I want that. I want some of that love. And I think that's why I at one point I tried really, really hard to then be academic so I could get that. And I did. My GCSEs are the the best in my siblings. My academic record is now the best among all my siblings, alhamdulillah, But that was because psychologically I was trying to win acceptance. I was trying to win that love. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it turned into a habit after a bit. The more you do something, it turns into a habit and it becomes second nature. I mean,
Yeah.
how it started, there are many reasons, but then you
Yeah.
get into this habit and it just becomes automatic.
It does.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm using this app where I'm learning some French language, and then they
Mhm.
put you on a kind of a league, and then they give you a point system. And because I'm such a driven narcissist, you know, when I compete with my son, I always beat him because I'm just so driven. You know, nothing's going to stop me from getting to the top.
Not even your son. No, it's
No,
like,
and
no.
then he looks at it, he goes, "Oh, I give up." But that's because I was driven as well by my parents to get to the top of the class and not
Mm.
let anyone else defeat you. Otherwise, you got to contend with your mother. And you know, when
Yeah.
mothers are angry,
Yep.
it's a horrible sight.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know that all too well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were in Pakistan until when?
Until 2002,
How old were
um,
you at the time?
I was 12.
All right, 12. Okay. So
This is
um
just when puberty is hitting. Yeah. Yeah.
so did you have any kind of sexual urges at the time, or was it before you left or after you left? What was the
I
sexual dynamics at the time?
Yeah, I noticed like just when I was leaving Pakistan, I had like, kind of like, oh, okay, this I'm getting, or first time you get an erection, you're like, okay, what is this? You don't even understand what it is, as a child. And I remember having that, like, what is it? And going to my dad and saying, what is this? And he's like, oh, it's fine. What's happening is fine. Because I just didn't know what it was, because it was, some tactile movement. And then it's like, and obviously back then you have, there isn't like this education, which is now, which they give you. So it was, um, it was confusing. And I remember that in when the attraction came, I can remember more of the attraction came in England, and the reason for that was um, I used to feel different in Pakistan from the rest of the boys, but now I'm in England and I'm in a completely different culture. The way I speak English, which I used to pride on, isn't how other people speak English here, because their accent is different. You know, when I look to people, it was like, okay, my skin color is different. I would have so many things which I would say I'm again going back to, I'm different from everyone else. That kind of thinking. And funnily enough, my sexual attraction was never towards Pakistani men. It was then, at that point, it was towards white men, because that was now what was different. So the sexual attraction actually is coming, or was coming from a place of, they have this, I don't have it, I want that. It seems like these people, white people, seem to be better off than I am, right? Or this is where I want to go to, or they're different. I'm trying to assimilate, but I can't assimilate because I'm this skinny 12-year-old Pakistani boy who finds himself in a um, uh, at that time quite a rough school in Manchester, who's kind of trying to desperately fit in, um, and yeah. So my attractions at that time was like, I remember going to Google and writing "men like men." What does that even mean? Because I didn't even understand what the attraction was. And obviously at that age, at 12, that was when, because of, remember Google Images, remember writing, naughty things in there, and the internet was so slow, waiting until the things would come in. So it was a lack of knowledge of what I was experiencing, and then using, because I was good in computers, and going there and then searching and saying, oh, okay, so this is what it is. Yeah. So I would say it's
And
12, my sexual experience, or, at least understanding what this attraction is.
did you travel with your dad? Did your dad travel with you? Was it the whole family that that came over to
The whole
Manchester?
family came
Yeah,
over. Yeah,
yeah.
my dad got a job. He said my dad decided that he wanted to retire in England because he felt that now that I'm 12, that everyone's at least grown enough to know the values, know the language, know the culture, know the families. And then he decided to go back because obviously when he did his MRCP he came in the 70s. And as soon as my mum, as soon as they got married, they went to UK and then they went back basically. But then he felt after 20 years, he felt, okay, I'm going to go back because I think my children are, they've got what they needed from here. And he wanted to retire in England. So he made the decision to take all of us back to England at that point.
And
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me asking this, but what are his central values that he wanted you to learn and understand by living in Pakistan?
So he saw in UK, he kind of saw like people don't have the respect for family, family values, and like just immorality, and not, like from an Islamic perspective, just having that immorality which was there, and he wanted for us to not lose that. And again, that comes from the Sayyid religious kind of backthrow of it.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we see it from a secular lens, it's good because I think part of it was also roots based, so you're not forgetting where you're coming from. You're I don't know if proud is the word, but at least you're uh, recognizing and you're affirming where your roots are.
Yeah. I mean, all societies have hierarchical structures, so he wanted you to give you a good basis in terms of your own, let's say, self-worth or self-esteem, to know that your hierarchical structure is actually very strong and high in these societies, and that allows you to build in newer societies where you pretty much start from the bottom and have to work your way up. And this is something that your father's done in the past and demonstrated. And also, when you are at the top, I mean, this is the case when I go to Iraq. When I go to the Iraq, I'm at the top of the pyramid, and okay, it's nice, I guess, but then you can't be yourself because you have to act within that, the top of the pyramid. It's a bit like the queen. The queen can't be herself. There are norms and there are ways of doing things and etiquettes which she can't break. So it does have consequences and it does have drawbacks.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There is that, like we mentioned before, that okay, we're Sayyid, so you can't be doing some of the things, and in Pakistan especially, and I think in Muslim culture as well, the family honor is so high, like that in Muslim societies, and I think it's not, I don't think it's just a Pakistani cultural issue. I think in generally in Muslim societies, if someone just even finds out that one of your children has a mental health issue or anything, they're like, oh, people like, no, we don't want to share that because our family honor is going to go down. I remember my eldest sister, she's Down syndrome, right? And in Pakistan, my sisters would not tell other people that, oh, we have a Down syndrome sister, even though there's nothing, like now with the Western upbringing, we think that's absolutely preposterous what we were thinking at that time. But it's almost like the family honor kind of thing, as it's a ridiculous level where you can't say anything. So in Pakistan, you have the opposite problem of really families which are really, really broken, but they can't say anything because they fear their honor would drop from that society, kind of thing. Um, and that was a big reason why I didn't want people to know that I was struggling with, say, the attractions, because if I thought, okay, I don't really care what happens to me, but I cared for what would happen to my family, if my family just suddenly get, how could you raise someone who had same-sex attractions? How could you let someone deviate in that sense? And that's what I feared, and I didn't want that for my family to have that. you know um and I think that was a big reason why I kept it. I didn't tell anyone for a long, long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to the broken family issues, back home, whether it's in Pakistan or Iraq, and this way of doing things gets perpetuated and passed down to the next generations.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it is something that I think needs to be broken or changed, at least, um,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
next generations. Otherwise, this brokenness and this distress continues. So you had this, it's all Google's fault, of course, being an IT expert. Um, but what was it in white men that you wanted from them? What is it from them
Mm.
that you wanted that you weren't
It,
getting?
I remember.
And why
Uh,
not white women?
yeah, yeah. It's a really good question. Um, I remember in because I was really academic, and I excelled everything. The only thing I couldn't excel was PE class. Right, it was crap, absolute crap for sports. And I saw this one of the boys. He was white, blonde eyes, blue eyes, blonde hair, and he would just do everything really well, and he would get positive regard from the teacher. And I kind of looked at him and I say, why can't I be like that? you know um and it's interesting because my attraction now goes towards blonde eye, blue-eyed people, because I'm transferring that across. Yeah. um and and generally in Pakistan, you grow up, people, I remember you had this silly Fair and Lovely, which is like a skin whitening cream that people would put so they'd appear whiter. There's this whole um uh we've been ruled by the Brits, obviously, so we had that, kind of the white skin is better kind of thing. Why female? Why not male? When I was growing up, the female was so familiar. So when kids go through that time where they're being really shy around, the opposite sex, I was like, why are you being shy? There's no, there isn't anything. But with the guys, when I used to sit with them, I was like, you're just mysterious because I don't understand, like, why you like football, why you like these things, because these things are boring to me. The type of conversations they would have, I just couldn't really involve myself in them. I was like, I was just thinking, why do they like these things? So what was mysterious to me, or what I perceived myself to be different from, that's when at puberty that becomes sexualized, because I could sit with women all day and speak, and it was familiar. It was a very familiar. Whereas with men or with boys, I would really not feel comfortable in my skin, and um, I would feel that, either I'd be judged or I wouldn't be able to sustain the conversation, partly because I didn't have many male friends, when I was growing up. And most of my life was quite sheltered in my family home. like I said, our school day was so long, we'd go back. We couldn't even go to birthday parties because they were in Islamabad. We were in Rawalpindi. We were in two different cities, so we couldn't even travel. So it was a very kind of sheltered upbringing, and it was a very feminine dominated upbringing. So when I look back at it, I'm like, I didn't have, and it wasn't anyone's fault as such, but it was just the fact that there wasn't any masculine involvement which I looked up to. I didn't really identify with a mentor. I didn't like any male teacher, kind of like who I would see as a mentor. I would say, oh, I really want to be like this guy. Even in my religious thinking, I would see Sayyida Fatima, for example. I would connect with her more than Imam Ali, for example. Again, this whole paradigm of feminine strength. Sayyida Zainab, for example, to have gone more than Imam Sajjad, for example. So I would always have this paradigm of the female being stronger, because that was how my upbringing was, or at least that was my perception of the world at that time. Yeah.
And then when did you get you get the courage to have your first relationship? How long did it take you to sort of
First relationship, as in like speaking to
same-sex relationship?
same-sex relationship.
Yeah.
Um, I never, like, maybe like on the apps,
Yeah.
like speaking to someone or
Yeah.
stuff like that. I never conducted a relationship. Like I never like had a boyfriend or anything like that.
Right.
I was lucky in that sense that um, my same-sex attractions usually were mental. It was either pornography or at times the apps. I wouldn't really meet people, or if I'd gone and I met people, it would never turn to a relationship.
Did something stop you from going there?
Yeah, I think it was. I remember reading the traditions, and the traditions are very, very strong, and I remember having a dream when I was 7, and I had this dream in which there's these very big clay pieces, and the sky is like dark. It's like like a really scary red dark, and these pieces of marble are falling on particular people, right? And I still remember this dream, and I'm really scared, and I can hear screams in the background, and then these pieces of clay or marble, they're designated for certain people, and I'm seeing this in the dream. And then I'm going back and I'm thinking, what is going to bring me solace? And I'm only 7 at that time, and I'm opening up and I'm thinking, what is going to bring me solace? So I'm saying, God's going to bring me solace. So in the dream, I'm trying to open the Quran, but the Quran's blank and I can't see anything in the Quran. So when I looked at that later on, in terms of the story of Lut, and then the destruction, and then what's happening, I was like, oh, okay, God's giving me that message very early on. Be steady in what you're doing. I had dreams where I would have the imam or people coming and saying, don't do it, don't go there, don't do it. So they knew I already had that connection where God was kind of saying, preparing. At 7, I didn't even know what it was. At 7, I didn't even have the same-sex attractions, but I remembered that dream. So I knew God was kind of saying, don't cross that boundary as such. So in that sense, I was quite lucky that it didn't turn into a relationship. The only first relationship I had was when I started looking for marriage after doing the work. And then it's even harder because you're like, I'm looking and I have same-sex attractions, right? So it's even harder when you're going that. But I didn't. I may have had crushes or like that growing up. But I didn't really have a relationship.
And when did you start doing the work? And tell us more about the work.
So it was I was 22 at the time, and at the time I was studying. I was in university. I was doing my placement, and I was learning to drive as well. And I was on my own. And this was like the first year where I'm on my own, doing all of these things, learning to drive in Cheltenham, and like away from family. And there was a lot going on. And I'm thinking,
Lots of
my head was
blonde,
just clouded.
blue-eyed, big, stocky,
big,
muscular
big
men
stocky person, just
everywhere.
come and save me. Yeah. And I was like thinking, oh my God, I need support. I need support in this, right? And I need to tell someone, because I'm now 22. I'm heading to that stage. And it was one driving lesson where the driving instructor just said to me, Ali, I just don't know what's happening in your head, but anything which I'm telling you isn't going through. And then when I realized that I needed help, I needed to go to someone. And the first person that I told, after 11 years or so, 10 or 11 years, was a university counselor. And I couldn't even put it on the, you signed a form, and I just said to be discussed. I didn't even put the reason because
Just in
it
case someone
couldn't.
finds out.
Exactly. In case some silly administrator finds out who wasn't supposed to find out that I
And
had
being
things.
in the Shia community, once you open your mouth, the whole community finds out.
Absolutely, yeah. So I remember the first counseling session and being there and saying, and they say, so what's brought you here? And it took me, I was like, I couldn't say, the words, I I like men. I couldn't say it because there was so much shame. There was years and years of shame in that statement, and I couldn't say it. And when I finally said it, and then she said, how do you feel now? And I was just like, thinking, oh, the world hasn't collapsed. Basically, I'm still here. Um, and that was that point where I was, and then she said, what do you want to be doing? I was quite lucky. This person was a person-centered counselor. If they had been like some directive counselor, they would have gone in and said, embrace it, or and I had those experiences later on which were quite damaging. But that was the point where I was like, oh, so I have it, and I need to accept it, and I need to actually start doing work on it. And then when I researched, I got hold of the only organization which does work with regardless of faith background, which is Brothers Roaders. People can change at that time. And funnily enough, their next weekend was, it said Southwest England, and I was in Bristol at that time. And I was like, could this be a bigger sign? And this was a US organization which would never come to the UK. And the weekend which I went was actually their last ever UK weekend. So again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala coming in, aligning that. And when I went onto the weekend, which was in 2013, I then could finally see there were people who had, who were of faith. They didn't have shame about the same-sex attractions, and they had reached a point where their faith was congruent their values and beliefs were congruent with their experience of sexuality. And I was like, ooh, I want that. I want, that struggle which is happening in me, where one side of me is saying one thing and the other side is saying something else. I can see people who've reached a level of peace with that, and that's where I want to get to. And once I could see people who had actually, done it, and it was then that I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing now, and yeah, and I'd read the books, I'd read Nicolosi, I'd read different books, and it was like, this is me. I'd read the books and I'd be crying. It was almost like reading the Quran, because it was like, this is haq, this is me, this is what's happening. And yeah, and then that's kind of the 22, 23 is kind of the ages where I then started the work, and started coming towards support groups, counseling, and things like that. Yeah.
What was the most effective way of change for you?
Good question. It was the support groups. It was the weekly check-in. How am I doing? What's happening? Let's go. And I would hear from people, and I'd connect with their stories. I'd reflect back. Some days I didn't want to speak much. Some days I really wanted to speak. And that group dynamic, I kept it for like, I think 3-4 years I was in the support group. And that really, really helped me have that check-in. So yeah, I
And
would
this
say
was
that was.
faith-based, not a Muslim support
This
group.
was, yeah. So this was not a Muslim group. This was just individuals who are working on this similar goal. So it had people which actually had, some of them didn't have any faith. So yeah.
But they had issues around sexuality.
They had issues around sexuality, which yeah.
I mean, how do you define sexuality?
Sexuality, I would define it on 2 levels. So one is the romantic level. Yeah. So the romantic as in the affectionate level, as in the friendship type, or the supportive, friendship, and that kind of energy. And I think the other energy, apart from this romantic type of soft energy, is then the sexual energy, which is more, which is more like passionate, or what the Quran would say shahwa, we would say lust, kind of lust-based kind of energy. And I think both of those would probably come into sexuality. So when we speak to clients, I often say, is this connection coming from a very physical place, or is it coming from a needs and emotional needs place? Sometimes it's different for different people. So I would say it'd be a combination of the two.
And these narratives can sometimes be what's the word, kidnapped by the bigger narrative, or the bigger stories, which is the media and politics and society, and that can feed as a certain type of story which we take as for granted. Now, there is a massive movement of LGBTQ plus, which is a very big political movement worldwide, particularly in the West, and it is sort of slowly petering into the Middle East and the Near East, and everywhere around the world. Now that must have affected you, as you were going through your development in your teens and adolescence and early adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the LGBT community, what we say is, I can share the pain that they're going through, and and the movements, because I can totally identify having the same journeys as a lot of them, but my what I wanted to do was slightly different. So I didn't need Islam to tell me that these feelings which I'm getting at are, in my experience, are coming from a place of shame, or coming from a place of I'm not identifying. I knew from a very young age that if someone said, okay, in Islam, you can have a same sex relationship and you can live like that, I know I wouldn't be able to live with a man, because again, when we talked about the sexuality, they he may fulfill my sexual need, but he can't fulfill my emotional need, because my emotional need is still, for me, feels better with a woman, and it always did, right? But I still had the physical need, which was the sexual need, which was playing. So I could see, okay, this is coming from a place of um, physical need, a lustful need, and it's not coming from a place of, no, I actually feel more comfortable with a man, and this is my experience, and I can only speak for myself. So I was I was saying, okay, what about people who want to explore their sexuality with their faith, and maybe see potential for um, uh, uh, a relationship with a woman. Again, I don't use these words of labels of straight. I don't call myself straight. I think it's a label. I don't identify with it. In Islam, there is no such thing as straight. Islam doesn't talk about, even these concepts of hetero homosexual are 1900 based. They're not really based before that. So the label doesn't really mean anything for me. What means to me is, can I live a life according to my beliefs and values, according to my values, not inherited values from people. I sincerely believe, even if I didn't have my faith base, I would still be in conflict with my same-sex attractions, because they just didn't, they were coming from a place of me being incongruent with my gender, and not really coming because I'm seeking acceptance from my family or the community. Yeah. So when the LGBT come in, I I can empathize with them, because I'm in a very similar situation to them. So so even in strong support, we say we're not anti-LGBT at all, because that's their truth and that's what they're living. But what we're saying is, if you're people like us who actually feel that they would like to explore the possibility of marriage, possibility of aligning their faith values with their sexuality in the terms of Islam and so on, then here's a space for you. Here's a safe space for you, for you to. And that was what was missing, and that's what frustrated me from the community. It was the thing that frustrated me was the lie that sexuality is fixed. That was something which frustrated me, that it was a fixed thing. It wouldn't change for anyone. You're either straight, you're gay, and there is nothing in between. There was that type of ideology, which when I went to a counselor, another counselor, and she was you'd like this, Haida. She was CBT based.
Hey, don't make me into some kind of wait. I have lots of very nice CBT mates. We're good mates. Chill. Chill, mate,
And
chill.
she said to me, "You've got this mantra going in your head." She actually said that you've got this mantra that you're okay, and why don't you just embrace it? Why don't you be gay? She said, "Have you tried pink therapy?" And I was like, are you seriously telling me to try pink therapy?
What's pink therapy?
Pink therapy is, gay affirmative therapy, which kind of goes, you okay, let's accept this, accept who you are. And I would say it's a very directive form of therapy because it tells you who you are. It's very directive in that it's saying, no, you're not, you're gay, you'll be happier with a man, and that's it. And it doesn't leave.
Does that happen? Is there sort of groups and organizations and people that do gay therapy? Sorry, I meant pink therapy.
Yeah. So you can look it up. Pink therapy is an actual thing.
Right.
Gay affirmative therapy is an actual form of therapy. And it's actually, not only is it done, it is something which is recommended. So it's the recommended form. So if you go into BACP, if you go into there, they will argue sexuality. We make the assumption that sexuality is fixed. It cannot be changed. And any person who kind of does this work, kind of is barking up the wrong tree. And that stance is what frustrates me, because my experience was different, and not my experience, is experience of so many people I know. I mean, there's a B in the LGBT. It says bisexual. It says there's fluidity, and there's been works of Lisa Diamond, there's been works of so many other people who show the sexual fluidity which is in humans. So then to take a stance which is very rigid, and just say you're either one or the other, and you can't, you have to choose, that's what annoyed me from the community. And it wasn't so, even when if you've got some gay activists, and again, these are gay activists which are a bit like, like in Islam we have crazy activists who are doing
Crazy Shias, crazy Sunnis.
Crazy Shias, yeah. So crazy LGBT activists who say no, any type of talk which allows people to move from homosexuality to heterosexuality is evil, it's harmful, it's painful, it's it's discriminatory. Yet when the opposite is happening, which is happening, gay affirmative therapy, no one says anything, no one bats an eyelid. And I think there's the hypocrisy in the system at present, which I think if you would speak to most counselors and psychotherapists who don't, who aren't afraid to be politically correct, they will say, no, this is wrong because it impacts the self-determination of the client. And I think that's my issue. And that's the thing which I find annoying. It isn't so much the LGBT community, it's the fact that a premise is made where people like myself can't access help in the present, in the present structure. And that's the reason why I felt very strong that I had to make a stance and create the organization, because I personally know, since we started Strong Support, I've had numerous calls from people who have been negatively harmed by counselors telling them who they are, they're gay, and they need to accept it. And that's really damaging to, to people who are thinking, well, I don't fit in that identity, I don't take that myself. Well, I'm not shamed about my same-sex attractions. I'm not saying that I don't experience them, but please don't label me. Please don't label me to something which I'm not, And I think that's basically the premise where, which we're trying to hopefully move on the conversation to say, yes, people may experience same-sex attraction, but some of us may choose to live in a way which is more congruent with our faith beliefs and system, whether that's celibacy, whether that's marriage, whether that's, whatever it is, there needs to be respect for that diversity.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to allow for change. I mean, I'm wearing a Darth Vader t-shirt right now, and even this man changed several times.
Yes, yes.
And he's
Goes
become
back one
iconic
way.
because of his change, because of his stances and changes in life.
Yes, yeah, goes through between the good and evil side. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what was the backlash, the reaction of the Muslim community to you and your work?
I've been from I've been quite lucky. Most of the people have said that it's really good. On an individual level, people have said this must have taken a lot of courage. Thank you for doing it. A lot of the people came up to me saying thank you for raising the voice. Yeah. The difficulty which I have is more in terms of institutions, right? So I remember being invited for a talk which wasn't on strong support, something was completely different. And I got explicitly asked from the organization not to mention strong support, even though I wasn't going to do so. And I've had, I've approached psychotherapists, Muslim psychotherapists, say, would you come in, do a talk, do something? Blank. No one wants to touch the topic. No one wants to come forward. No one wants to say anything. Why? Everyone's scared. Everyone's very,
What
very
are they
scared.
scared of?
I guess they're scared that they would upset or they would lose their professional membership, because at the moment it is, very, very, if you speak anything which is slightly seems to be away from the current narrative, the current LGBT narrative, then you're what do you call it, a conversion therapist. Yeah. All they'll tar you with something, and and that is, that's the fear. The fear is that you would lose whatever professional membership you would lose that, because you're having that slightly different position, slightly different worldview on things. And I think that's why no one wants to touch the topic. No one wants to come forward. I'm the only public figure, at least English-speaking figure, which I know has come out as same-sex attracted, but not acting upon it. In the Muslim community, I'm yet to find. I hope more people come out, because there is no the part why I came public is saying, look, there isn't any shame in having the same-sex attraction. It's a reality. Why should we be shamed about something which is a reality? Why are we living in this shame? I'm encouraging people to come out in that sense. But the community is so far behind that just having the discussion on sexuality or these issues is difficult, let alone someone coming up and saying, oh, this actually happened to me. I've been in loads of these Muslim gatherings, and it's very hard for a Muslim to come up and say, I suffered from depression. And as soon as someone says, I suffered from depression, it all goes very silent. And depression is common. It's such a common thing. So the biggest thing which is I've experienced by doing this work is the extent of shame which is present in the Muslim community is unimaginable. It is absolutely unimaginable. So even in the support groups which I'm doing, people would be using pseudonyms. Some of the support groups, they won't show the face, even though it's a contract. We have a contract, there's confidentiality, all the other people are in the same boat. Still, it takes a long time for a lot of the clients that we support to say in these groups to turn the video on, use the real name, because there's so much shame around this issue. So I think as a community, we're very, very behind on allowing allow these people to come into mosques, allow these people to engage, and have that. And yeah, I can see you're smiling.
Yeah, I mean, faith is welcoming. Faith is embracing. Faith is allowing. That's what faith is
Mm,
about.
yeah.
It's got no exclusivity whatsoever.
Mm,
And it
mm.
really gets on my tits when people become very exclusivistic.
Yeah, definitely.
It really annoys me.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could have a right old rant, but I'll be coming on your organization, and I'm going to have a right old rant for your,
Inshallah, yes, have
you
that
know,
rant. We welcome it.
you'll embrace my rants.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I feel it, and we had one of my friends, Wahid Jensen. He has a blog, he has a podcast on this, and I invited him on the show. And this is the thing, exact same thing. He said the person who has to come on the minbar needs to be this angel, perfect angel, which is
We don't
just
want
dropped
him
from
or her. We don't
the
want angels.
sky.
Fuck them, as they say. Well, I
Yeah,
guess that's not really attraction anymore. Is it?
yeah. But
Give him
yeah,
a good
it's just
shag.
like, astaghfirullah, she can't go on the minbar. Her job isn't proper, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
This type of hypocrisy, which basically says, oh, if they're going on the podium, they have to be almost like in the gay community, you have to have a six-pack.
really.
In the Muslim community, yeah. So you
Yeah,
have this image conscious,
yeah,
very judgmental LGBT, kind of where we have this, okay, you need to be of a certain image
yeah,
to, you know, gloss the page of um, a gay magazine, LGBT magazine. It's a similar in our faith. Oh, you need to have the best hijab and the
yeah,
best Sayyid,
yeah,
Sayyida,
yeah,
and it's the same. It's there's this perception of this is what good looks like, and
yeah,
if you're anything else apart from this very small square box, then then sorry, we can't invite you, or
yeah,
you can't come in. And that really frustrates me, because it negates the diversity of the human experience, and it negates the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and we've created you from different tribes and different races, that you may know each other, not to
yeah,
say I'm better than you, or my tribe's better than your tribe.
yeah.
So yeah, so that, yeah, I'm gonna I won't rant on, as you said.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fine to rant on, and psychologically speaking, any ideal, if you have an ideal, you'll never get there. You'll break down. You'll be frustrated. Your expectation will be shattered at any ideal, no matter what it is.
Mm.
So the ideal is there to sort of fall away from. Um, so it's a losing battle with any idealistic um, idea, so to speak.
Mm.
You can
It's
never
like
get
when
there.
you've got someone who's unreachable. And that's why, as Muslims, we will connect with brokenness,
Yeah,
you know
it's closer
like,
to us. This is
yeah.
closer. The ideal, you'll never get there, and the higher your ideal, the worse it gets for you as a human being in this living experience.
Mm. Yeah,
So, yeah, yeah. Idealistically speaking, you're on a loser.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think every little step is closer to the goal, so to speak. So, with podcasts like this, and you speaking to more diverse individuals, the message gets across that bit closer.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw you on a Muslim podcast which went out last year.
Yeah.
And then we connected, and then you told me that we met many years ago,
Yeah.
which was interesting.
That's right. Yeah.
I can't remember what we talked about, but it must have been fascinating because you instantly remembered me.
Yeah, I remember you come in and I was like, oh, he's an ophthalmologist. I said, never met
He's not
ophthalmologists. I
blue-eyed, but
remember.
he is a bit blonde. I may have had a wig at the time.
Yeah, I remember, and I was like, I remember you being very uh, talkative and
Yeah.
kind of very like relaxed and I was like, okay, that's good. And yeah, it was Rajab. It was
Right.
near 22nd Rajab at that time. So it was actually, yeah, it was actually very, very similar time from now. It was a few years ago, but yeah, it was small world. Yeah, what
Yeah,
can I
small
say?
word, definitely. And I mean, I'd love to talk for another hour with you, and I'm sure the listeners are fascinated by this whole sort of dynamic of culture and religion and
Mm.
sexuality and attraction. And it is a very fascinating story, and it's outside, the current
Mm.
politically correct narrative which we're fed on
Yeah.
a daily basis, and people are hounded for having a personal view about something that's just ubiquitous with life, which is sexuality.
Mm.
Sexuality is such a personal thing. It's not
Yeah.
another box for you to be put into. And I read somewhere that everything is commercialized, and this is another form of commercialization of sexuality. And I think the only
Mm.
thing that hasn't been commercialized yet is dreams. But soon, if you have a nightmare, they'll have a tablet for you.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
me saying this because I love to analyze dreams and what have you. So I am biased from that kind of sense. But if you have bad dreams, you go and see a person that can take it away with a
Mm.
tablet.
Yeah, well,
So,
we have a lot of stories and of dream interpretation in Islam. We have a lot of that. Yeah,
and
or
it's
in the
quite funny
Quran.
because on the pulpit they say dreams are not to be considered as like haq, or a kind of way of deriving jurisprudence edicts.
That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's loads of example in the Quran where prophets have been given dreams. So I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know
even
it.
in the Quran, but they're prophets. You're not. Da, da, da. But I mean, as a psychoanalyst, dreams are
Absolutely,
our
yeah.
gemstones. Are the thing that really gets us excited and turned on. Really, it really turns me on.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, dreams, very, very deep. I get questions from people saying, we're having this. Uh, Actually, it's very useful in the session saying, I'm having this dream, and I always ask people, what was the emotion?
Mm,
What was the underlying emotion that was you're feeling? Because the data is not important, but it's how you were, made felt. And I remember when I was doing my work, I was having loads of dreams with my history coming back and traumatic memories coming back, my brain trying to dump stuff back.
mm.
So yeah, no, so much to be explored in the unconscious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Definitely. I'm salivating right now just hearing the words of the unconscious. Gets me really excited. Um, where would you like to see yourself, say, in 5 years' time?
It's a very good question. Well, at present, I'm training in counseling. I'd never I work in IT, I work in software. Never kind of imagined I'd be treading down this
Mate,
psychotherapy.
surgeon becomes psycho kind of person.
I don't,
Who would have
yeah,
thought it? Narcissistic
exactly.
surgeon becomes a touchy-feely, psycho-y.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think most people come to the profession, I want to grow up and be a psychoanalyst. I don't
Yeah.
think we kind of we have that. But yeah, in 5 years, I hope that, kind of I've set up strong support in a sense that we're reaching more people. We're maybe having more. At the moment, everything's online. I'd like to be doing something physically after COVID, kind of all this. And um, and yeah, just growing. I'm growing. I'm not a finished product by any means. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. So yeah, I guess uh, I still have work, to do, and it's so meaningful. This type of work is so meaningful towards, to me, because I spent my life hiding a part of me, and being ashamed of it. And now, and like you said, the interview of going public with it is a still very big change for me. And it's just seeing where that goes. And I really feel that I'm authentic and I'm congruent. Um, I think the best thing for me is my wife. My wife's my support. She knows everything. Even if I'm going back to the SSA thing, thinking, oh, that's a good looking guy. Like I'll share that. Because she's like a friend, and I've alhamdulillah, it shows it's possible. If so many people, and there might be people listening, who are thinking, I can't share that, or I can't do that. And I've just learned that by being really, really vulnerable, really, really authentic and sharing, that's actually set me freer, because I'm being authentic and I'm not living a lie, and I'm not pleasing people to say, "Oh, accept me and accept this."
Mate, you're years ahead of me. I can't say, my wife's sitting next to me. Oh, she looks beautiful. She looks nice.
Oh,
I'd get the fucking chop, mate.
oh
Lucky
dear.
bastard. Yeah.
I guess it's probably different for me because I had to tell the world. So it was like, okay. I did ask her before telling. I said, "Are you okay with me going with this?" And she was supportive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
It's been a great pleasure, Ali. It's so nice to hear you, and it's refreshing. It's good that we can talk about these things. The whole concept around, and it's so important. It's sex and sexuality is actually central to our living in this world. It's
Mm.
not a side issue. It's actually a main issue.
No, absolutely. And thank you for being brave, for having me, having discussed this topic. I would say I was like, okay, I'm going to these places. I'm saying, does anyone want to talk about this? Anyone? And then I see, hey, there's email come up, and I'm like, subhanallah, actually someone's brought it, and someone wants this discussion. So may Allah bless your efforts, the surgical podcast, and what you're doing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
I mean, it's fun for me. I mean, I was sitting with a relative, and I was discussing you. And the first thing they said is, "Why are you giving him a platform?" That was the first thing that they said.
mm,
So
mm,
I just stayed quiet because there's no point creating conflict.
yes,
Um,
yeah,
because
it
it was like a birthday party and things like that. So anyway, that's life.
it's slow progress, but we have to do what we have to do. So
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
honestly, may Allah bless you in what you're doing, and you're staying true to what your own faith and values are, and not giving a damn.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And next year we can do another session, another podcast episode, and you can tell us how strong support has grown over the year.
Yeah, no, but before that, I look forward to you on our webinar
Yeah, I
to
mean it'll be
share
full
your
of juices, lots of spunk, lots of semen, lots of fluids.
That's what we want. Lots
Yeah,
of
yeah,
bodies.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But bring your own lubrication with you.
Yeah.
Everyone brings their own lubrication.
That sounds fantastic. I'm sure you've already triggered a lot of interest.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Okay, my friend, you take care of yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay.